All right. So
Okay.
I thought we could ask about something. I'm going to try to do a little screen sharing if I
Okay.
know what I do, what I'm doing. So you can see me, okay, right?
I can.
You can't or can?
I can. Yes.
Okay. So thought we would talk about this trunk that I have in my living room. Can you see the pictures there?
Uh-huh. Yep.
So that's the trunk. It's the centerpiece of my fancy living room.
Okay.
So that says transportation of Fort Sheridan, Illinois, Fort Wine. That would be
No,
Captain
that's
Robert.
not Ort wine.
Well, but that's what
I
it
don't
says
think it's
here on
I
the
don't think it
lid.
says Ort wine on it, does it?
It does. And then it has
Huh.
a Washington street address in Racine, Wisconsin. So is that where you guys lived when you first moved here?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So what, did you rent a house or what? That's
We rented a house for about 6 months, and then our furniture came, and so we um bought a house then. Well, no, actually we dumped our furniture off first at the little house on Spring Street. It was owned by Mr. Bus.
who was that?
And huh?
Mr. Bus?
Yep.
Hmm.
Do you remember him?
No, actually.
Cheyenne and Bob Bus had a house next door to their house on Spring Street, and so um, they rented us this, and all the doctors that came to the clinic would rent that house. And we were like the fourth or fifth. We went right after the flocks. The flocks came in, and then they left, and then we came in, and we were there about 6 months before we got our furniture, and we um, went to the house on Highway 32, that the log cabin, sort of.
Yeah, yeah. On Sheridan Road.
Yep.
Yeah. So you were able to ship this for free because Dad was in the Army. He was an officer.
Right. I think that actually came home on the plane with us.
Yeah, it says transportation, Fort Sheridan, Illinois. So I guess it passed through there.
I suppose. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's kind of a good
To
deal.
that would have been the closest base to where we were.
Yeah. Well, that was a good deal. You could have stuff shipped for
Yep.
free. Yeah.
Yeah, we shipped a lot of stuff for free. Our car went to Thailand, then we sold it in Thailand for much more than we would have sold it for at home.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so all that stuff was transported for free, and some things we had left behind in the US of A. We left a lot of stuff here because they said don't bring furniture. You can buy, Bangkok bamboo furniture for next to nothing. So don't bring any furniture. So we didn't bring a lot. We brought clothes, and I don't think we brought any furniture, maybe a bed.
Yeah,
They
okay.
didn't have good They didn't have good beds in Thailand, so we bought a bed. Brought a couple beds, the kids' beds and our beds. And then we
Now,
bought some stuff there. You've got, I think, a couple chairs from there.
yeah, I think I'm sitting on one right now.
Yep.
So who was Mary Jelinek? It says, is that Jelinek?
Yeah, we pronounce it Jelinek. Here in the United States, they pronounce it the way Howard's name is pronounced, Jelinek.
Jelinek. And that's American Red Cross?
She was from the American Red Cross, I believe. Yeah, she went there during the Second World War. She ended up in Southeast Asia most of the time, and I think she was kind of a big deal because she gave her time and effort. Even after her time was over, she stayed there for a while and did some good work.
But who was she to you? Was she like a cousin or what?
She was a cousin to my mother, so she'd be my second cousin.
Okay, so she took this steamer trunk with her when she went overseas during the war in World War II.
Right.
And she was a volunteer for the American Red Cross.
Mm-hmm. She was.
Yeah. It says that there.
I think she was not just, she was paid, because I don't think she was just a volunteer. She was paid. She was a nurse and helped a lot of people after the war. She ended up, I think, in Japan first, and then she went to the Philippines.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say it says Yokohama up there, so that would be Japan.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's near Tokyo. Cool.
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah. She was mother's cousin, and her mother was Frances Folda Jelinek. She married a Jelinek, and I keep trying to connect it to Howard because his father told me that they did end up in Nebraska for a while before they came to Montana. And so I'm going to send him the family history I have on the Jeleniks and see if there's any connection, but I don't know.
Okay. Cool. So there's Captain Robert K. Ortwine,
Yep.
and then there's that again. So he was stationed in Thailand.
Well, he
So
was stationed first in Fort Dix, New Jersey. We went to Fort Dix for a year,
yeah,
and they kept asking him to do these strange things, and I kept saying no. And
what
I
do you mean
almost said,
strange things? Like what?
well, they asked him if he wanted to be an astronaut. And he said
Yeah.
no, because I said no, I'm not going to sit with a bunch of wives and watch my husband go to the moon.
Mom, that would have been fun. Or,
Yeah.
but
And then,
so why was he? So like NASA approached him about being an astronaut. I'm guessing because he was like in the military. He was a small person, and back then astronauts were relatively small.
hey, how are you, Pierce? Just a minute. I'm talking to
Hi,
Orly for a
Pierce.
minute.
Hi. So
Pierce is here. Yeah.
yeah.
So
So I mean, Dad would have been good astronaut material because he was a military man. He was an educated family man, and he was a relatively small, athletic guy. And that was what they were looking for. This is like what 1965 or so, or what?
yeah, so I don't know why, except he must have suggested that he was willing to do anything because he asked him to be an astronaut, and then I can't remember, there was something else, and then they sent him to Bangkok to start a children's hospital. They had 17,000 dependents in Bangkok and no pediatrician and no hospital, really. I think he was one of the first floors that they put into a hospital finally. Um, and then he met a man a doctor who'd been educated in the United States, and that worked out. He worked for the government and could translate things and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So Dad was drafted when, like 1968 or so, or when is this?
1967, I think, at the end of he was drafted actually in 1966.
Okay.
And we went to Fort Dix for a year, and then in 67 we went to Bangkok, and then in 68 he was still there, but we were dismissed in March of 1969.
Okay. And he's practicing as a physician this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, as a pediatrician. Actually, he was he was a pediatrician, and so that's one reason they sent him to Thailand. They had lots of other pediatricians they could have sent, but they sent Dad.
Yeah. So Thailand was better than the moon, I guess.
Well, yeah, except I didn't know where I was going to go,
Yeah.
and everybody kept saying, because Dad had to put in an extra year because he took the kids and I.
Right. The
And
deal was
so,
he could have gone just a year by himself, or he could go 2 years if he took the family with him.
right, right.
So they really
And
didn't want
so
him to take the family
we,
with him, I guess.
we were trying to figure out whether we should go to Schuyler, Nebraska, or Montana, or where we should go. And my brother Martin called me and said, "You do not stay behind. You go with him to Thailand. It will change your life, but you must go."
Really?
So we went. He was, in the Marine Corps in the Second World War.
Uncle
He was
Martin.
he was 18 years old, and he was drafted. And they sent him to China. So that's why he said, "You just go. It's going to change your life. It changed mine." Uh, but I am ever grateful that I got that chance to go to China.
To
And
Bangkok.
when grandpa was a big wheel, in the Rural Electrification Association,
Yeah.
and he knew all the senators from Nebraska and
Yeah.
everywhere. So
Yeah, he got Martin home early from the
yep,
Second
he
World
got
War.
him
Yeah.
home 6 months early, and
So
Martin was very
yeah.
embarrassed.
So Uncle Martin was the one that really encouraged you and the whole family really
Yes.
to go to Bangkok. I didn't know that.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, were you at all scared for Dad when he first got drafted before you knew
Oh
where?
yeah, I was very, very concerned, but I wasn't too concerned because they had changed the Army rules back in the olden days. If you were a pediatrician and you were drafted in the Army, you might end up doing radiology or
Yeah.
whatever, surgery.
Wherever they wanted you. Yeah.
Yeah, but they had changed the laws, and I knew that Dad would not be sent to do that anymore. He would be sent to be a pediatrician. So the likelihood of him going to Vietnam was very low.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when he got the orders, it was for Thailand.
Yeah. Yeah. But still, I mean, in theory, he could have probably gotten out of the whole thing because he was a married family man. And
Well, he could have gotten out of the whole Army thing because the Army thing in Great Falls, Montana said, or the people that he practiced with in Great Falls, Montana said, look, we need you, we can get you out. And Dad said no. One reason was because he had an uncle who was killed in the Second World War. He was on his way home actually, and a sniper got him from someplace.
Yeah. That
And
was in
so
the yeah.
he gave his life. And then I don't know if you remember his other cousin. He used to come and visit once in a while, but I guess we saw him most in Montana. But Larry was the one that was killed, and I can't remember his other cousin's name right now. I have to think about it in a minute. But he served also. And then I think in the First World War, they may have been another cousin or somebody who had served in the First World War. So he said, look, my relatives have gone. I'm not going to not go. And then I was relatively unhappy in Montana. I was too young to move to a totally different environment, I guess. And that's what it was. And we had worked in a Catholic hospital with Catholic rules and stuff, and they didn't have that in the clinic that he joined. He was, just another guy, and it was not a Catholic hospital. They had a Catholic hospital there that he worked in, but it wasn't like Omaha where there was a lot of stuff going on in those hospitals and stuff.
Right. So
So
before,
I was going to go back and get my degree while I was there because I wasn't working and I didn't have to work. So I thought, well, I'll get my degree, and they wouldn't allow somebody my age to go back to school at that time. So I didn't go back to school and get my degree. So that was kind of another thing that I was upset about. And Molly was born there, and
was born where?
in Great Falls, Montana.
Yeah.
And the obstetrician didn't get to the birth on time because he was having an affair with his nurse.
Ah, good for him.
So I was a little bit upset about that. And what
So
else?
this is in Montana. So like when you and Dad first got married, before Dad went to Bangkok, you lived and Dad practiced in Great Falls for about a year, roughly.
Yeah, about a year and a half or two.
Yeah. Yeah. But you were glad to leave Great Falls for Bangkok?
Yeah. And then when we came home, I said, I'm not going back to Montana. And he said, I'm sure as hell not going back to Nebraska. So we picked out, probably because of the Green Bay Packers and his football history, we picked out Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah. Wasn't it his supervising physician in Bangkok that recommended him to Racine to oh, who was it back then? It wasn't All Saints, it was Racine Medical, whatever
Yeah,
that
it was Racine Medical, and Roger Laycock was the chief.
yeah.
And he wanted to hire Dad. He gave us the best offer, so that's really why we ended up there, I guess.
Yeah. So what did you think of Racine when you first moved there?
I thought it was pretty cool. And I told you the story about Dad going down to get his driver's license shortly, after we got here.
I don't think I know
And
that one.
yeah, and so he went down to get his driver's license. He called me and he said, "Are you related to just about everybody in the world?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, there's a statue here on Douglas Avenue of this guy, and his name is Carl Jonas. And I said, well, there were lots of Jonases, I'm sure. And that name was kind of like Smith in Czechoslovakia at the time. So I said, there probably is no relationship, but I'll call Mom and ask her. And I called Mom and I said, are we related to this guy? And she said, yeah. And I said, why didn't you ever tell me that?
Yeah, yeah.
But he was very responsible, and I still have not gotten the connection. I've been trying for years, but I still haven't gotten it.
Yeah.
But every time anybody came to see me from the grandparents and all that kind of stuff, we had to go down to the statue and have our picture taken with him.
Yeah, yeah. Whenever your mom and dad visited you in Wisconsin.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or, Katie and Smoke and Aunt Aggie and Uncle Lambert came one time, and he had kind of a stay in the hospital while he was there because he was having some chest pain. So
Yeah.
we went down to the statue quite a few times that time.
Yeah. But so you lived at the Spring Street house for a while, and then I guess on Washington's Avenue for a little bit, it looks like. And
Not
then,
Washington Avenue, but we lived on the south side of town.
okay, yeah, it has for some reason there's this address on the trunk that says like I can't make that out, like
I
1620.
suppose that was probably an army office or something.
Okay. And then you moved to the house on Sheridan Road.
Right.
Yeah.
And we lived there for 7 years and we
Yeah.
hated to leave, but we are toying with either building a few extra bedrooms on the north end of the house or uh, getting a different house. And we went to look at this house on 16th in Wisconsin, and it was perfect. It was a gorgeous home and had enough bedrooms, and we didn't have to add anything or subtract anything. And so I'm looking at the furniture, and we had that couch that Libby has now, and it had brown upholstery on it with a little bit of light blue piping on the cushions. And I looked at it and I looked at the carpet and I said, Bob, we're meant to be here. The carpet matches the piping on our sofa.
Yeah.
And he was pretty wild about it because he wouldn't have to take the kids to school every day.
Right.
And it
Yeah.
was there wasn't a school bus out there that far south of Racine. So after there was some by the time we left, but it was very sketchy. So he was happy that he didn't have to take the kids to school in the morning every day,
Mm.
and it worked out so well. He was close to the hospital and closer to the clinic. It was not The clinic was not quite as far as it is now. Well, now it's down by St. Mary's, but
Yeah.
um
Yeah. The clinic
so
was,
he was happy with a much shorter drive than usual.
yeah, and he was just down the street from St. Luke's back then, and
Yeah.
we all
In
wound up
fact,
going.
the third floor of our house, they started to finish it off. He was The doctor who built the house was going to have a little hospital there, and St. Luke's came over to him and said, "You can't build a hospital this close to the hospital, so you
Ah,
have to give that up." So legally, he had to give it up.
yeah. What was the name of that doctor again? Was that Ross?
Roth,
Or
R
Roth.
O T
Roth.
H. Yep.
Yeah. And
They
he.
were they were really lovely people. She would give her Easter hat to somebody the next year at Easter time in the somebody in the neighborhood. And he would take in patients and keep them if they were going to deliver a baby and they lived on a farm out in the country. He'd have them come and stay in the house. And
Wow.
they had that upstairs part was for that reason. They also had maids that lived up there, but if he had a patient that was going to deliver soon and she was too far away, he'd keep them there
I didn't know
for a
that.
couple
So
of days.
there were
And
live-in servants in the house when Dr. Roth ran the place.
right, uh-huh.
So they lived in
She
those
had
up.
terrible arthritis. She could hardly get up the stairs to the bedroom upstairs, and she did not want a staircase chair to take her up. She didn't want to ruin the looks of the house. So they put a post in there so that she could hang on to and swing around to get up the steps.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's too bad
But
there wasn't an armchair, a traveling chair. That would have been kind of fun.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
so
But anyways,
the first floor, like the north side of the house, was basically all the medical office, right? I remember like when I was a kid, we still had that reception area. That's why there were
right,
weird two doors on Wisconsin Avenue, because
right.
the prominent one was where patients went in, and there was like the secretary's office, and there was that it looked kind of like a place to buy movie tickets, like the booth that she would sit
Yeah,
behind. That was all still there when I was a kid. Like the girls used to do
yeah,
puppet shows for me in that little booth thing.
right. And
And
where the
then
back
oh,
hallway was that connected the no, where the bathroom was that we put in downstairs in that part of the house. There wasn't a bathroom when they built it. It was a laboratory so they could do some of their urine tests and blood tests and all that kind of stuff there. And down the basement, and if you remember when we first moved in, there was a double sink that was made out of cement. And they used to do x-rays and then develop them down there.
yeah, there was that weird developers booth in the basement.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
Shelly used to use, and Jenny, I think too, used it sometimes
Yeah.
to actually develop. We had a whole like photo lab in the basement because back then you still had to do the thing with like putting the picture and the chemicals and develop it and
Right.
hanging on a rope and all that stuff.
Right.
And
Exactly.
there was still that weird motor in the basement because that
Yeah,
ran
for a
the
long time.
refrigerator, right? Like
Yeah,
that.
we had a refrigerator down there, big refrigerator, 3 pieces. I don't think it ever had a freezer in it, although I might be wrong. I don't remember, but we took it out.
Yeah, that would have been, I guess, for what, samples or something like that. I mean,
Well, that no, that was for their groceries and
that was
stuff.
just the freezer.
Yeah.
But it had a weird little motor because this house was built right before World War II.
Yeah,
So it wasn't like today, like it's still there, I think. It looks like a little gasoline motor thing or something. I don't know.
yeah, we
That's
had a
what
little,
powers the
yeah,
fridge.
they had a little, what do you call it, generator
Um,
down there still in the basement. Yeah.
Yeah, so Dr. Roth practiced in the house. That was a thing at that time. This is right before the war. And
Well,
then,
not really in the house. His office was very secluded from the house. They had a double door, right inside the back door. There used to be a double door there. We took it out when we decided to make that into bedrooms and stuff, but um that
yeah, there
because
was,
that became the bathroom downstairs,
yeah,
that
there
area.
was,
So,
yeah.
but there had been double doors. You had to lock and unlock both of them to get into the office, and the office was very private um when they were there.
So basically the office was separated from the rest of the house, but it's still all that
Right.
one brick house. So
Yep. Yep.
he has like
It
the
was
office,
shaped in a
the
it
medical
was
equipment.
shaped in a T, and the long part of the T was the office.
Right, like the north part of the house, basically.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep.
But then, so sometimes patients would stay overnight in those bedrooms upstairs, like probably
Right.
some of the rooms, like the room that I had when I was a kid, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm.
And the floor in the attic is finished and it was insulated, so they were on their way to making that a hospital, but then they stopped.
They were going to put a hospital in the attic.
Yeah, and I think sometimes he might have kept patients up there, even
Yeah.
if he was overbooked or overloaded.
So there were just patients all over the house.
Yeah, they were. He was a very good person,
Yeah.
like your dad, and wanted very much to take care of people. And he came back to Racine because he felt he was too far out in the country for anybody to get any good service from him.
Mm. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, an old man stopped by in one of the tours when they were doing
Yeah,
tours of the house, and he said that during the war, he got his physical from Dr.
yeah,
Roth in that house before
yeah,
he went off to the army. Yeah.
yeah. And then another guy said that he um was born there.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Roth delivered babies there a lot,
Yeah, I
often.
didn't know that. Anybody die in the house? Is the house haunted?
Might have. I don't
Yeah.
know. I never heard that, but they might
Of
have.
course they
And
wouldn't tell
Mrs.
us that.
I don't know if you remember that little there's a little store, not a little store, a store out in not Sturtevant. What's that other little village north of Sturtevant? Anyway, there's a Klima feed store there, and Mrs. Klima helped build the house. She went and lived in Williamsburg for a year, and then she designed the house for them. And
Cool.
I talked to her before she passed away about the building of the house, and she said, "Yeah, it was all my idea. The dental molding on the ceiling and everything was, it was built by me."
Neat. But the Roths didn't own the house when you moved in, right? That was somebody else between
Yeah,
you.
no, somebody else had moved. There'd been two couples, and the fellow that was living there and his wife and family that was living there before owned Color Arts, which is they used to print T-shirts with designs on them and stuff. And
Yeah.
he made quite a bit of money at that because that was pretty new at the time. And I can't remember their name right now either, but I will get it probably before the end of the conversation. Um, and they came by once. She came by once by herself, I think, and then she said, "Would it be okay if I brought my sons down here because they loved this house and they hated to leave it, but we felt we had to get out in the country a little bit more or whatever." And so she and her husband and boys came through the house one more time. And I had an old fashioned telephone that used to belong to Grandpa and Grandma Shock, and I took it with me when they sold the farm. And they said, "Oh, you've still got our telephone up." And I said, "No, no, that's my phone. You took your phone."
Yeah.
But I put my phone up. And they had a lot of good memories of the house too, as well. I mean, that house has got a great reputation. Then Dr. Peterson lived there for a while as well, and he practiced medicine there too.
Oh, really?
Before I think their name was Johnson, before the Johnsons came to the house, um, Dr. Roth or Dr. Peterson moved in and practiced there for a while.
Oh, I didn't know about that. So he was after Dr. Roth?
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of doctors
But
through
it's
that house.
that house has wonderful history. If the people
Yeah.
who moved in there now don't like it, I would knock them in the head because it's got wonderful history of wonderful people, not just us, but wonderful people who live there.
Yeah.
Everybody was very good to the neighborhood and for the neighborhood, and it was a great place.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a neat house. I
Oh, it
remember
was
it's the
great
only, yeah.
history, and it's
Yeah. I don't,
very well built.
yeah. 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 I
I was
still
never
remember.
afraid in a storm because it was so well built. It took them, they took the wall down between the office and the house, and the carpenter who was, well, he wasn't a carpenter, he was a builder, who took it down, said, "Yeah, half a day we'll get this down, no problem." A day and a half later, they got it down.
Yeah. 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 They built them to last back then.
Yep,
Neat.
yep,
So when you first moved in, the house was completely empty. That must have been something like,
yeah. It was. It was very interesting. Yeah.
yeah. Was it a bit of a shock though? Because you guys were used to living on the countryside. You almost lived in Kenosha, really, like way down south on Sheridan Road.
Yeah. No.
Inward cities.
Before we were married, I was living in Omaha, and Dad was too, and we're kind of used to city life by that time.
Yeah.
And I missed the country, but it was just, it was too much work. We had a big lawn, and we were on the lake, and that began to fall apart too because the lake was eroding and falling apart. We used to have steps down to the lake, and one morning after the lake had risen quite a bit, we had a bad storm, and it just tore the steps off, and that was the end of that.
Yeah, you were right on the lake there pretty much, right?
Yeah, and it was just kind of scary because it wasn't going to be that kind of property anymore, where you had a nice lakefront with nice trees and all that kind of stuff. Grandma Shanka was there. I don't know if you remember when the last tree fell in. We had a
I don't
big
remember the house at
storm,
all. No, I mean, I was
and
a
a great
kid.
big huge tree fell in, and she was standing outside kind of close to the tree. Then she came running in the house. She said, "Roberta, the tree just went down. The last tree just fell in." And I said, "Well, Mom, I can't do anything about it. Sorry."
The last
Anyway,
tree
she was very
fell
excited because she was right there and saw the tree fall in.
fell in the lake.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really remember. I mean, I was a baby when we moved. I
Right.
don't remember the old
You
house
only a
at
year and
all.
a half when we moved over.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad that you did though, because I think, it would have been way harder going to school and all of
Well,
that.
yeah, and as I said, the property was losing its value because the lake was rising, and we were having a bad time trying to protect that bank.
Yeah, yeah. Well, neat. Cool. Well, don't have anything else to say. Next time, maybe talk more about the old house because I don't remember anything. So it'd be good to hear about it.
Okay.
But
It was a cute little house, and we Dr. Graff lived down the road from us when we lived on Highway 32, and that was one of his best friends that bought that house and lived there. And when they sold it to us, it was nice to know that they had lived there. They had been good friends with Graff, so it was good. It was
yeah,
a nice house. It was a great house. We had a great living room, playroom, and another living room, and it was just a very well built house. The only thing is we
yeah,
didn't have enough bedrooms. By the time you were born, everybody had to sleep with somebody else in the room,
yeah.
which didn't throw Brian a lot because you'd wake up in the middle of the night and cry.
Yeah, Brian and I had a rough relationship for the first 7 or 8 years or so, but we
Yeah,
shared a bunk bed. I remember that.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then he finally got to move into a bed by himself. But
yeah. He finally got Chrissy's old room and moved his
yeah,
beer can collection in and everything.
yeah,
All
yep.
right. Well, cool. Well, I'll
It was
call you in a bit. We can pass the phone around and talk. Be fun.
okay.
All right, cool. Talk to you in a bit. Okay.
Okay, honey.
Right,
Take
yep,
care.
yep, yep. Bye bye.
Bye bye.